Well, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Woo! Are we there already? It's
We are,
amazing.
baby. It's already 6:45. I just looked at the clock. I'm like,
That is
man, we are
nuts.
flying through this thing here tonight.
That is nuts. I was
know.
texting you earlier. I was like, I think we got enough, to get through the first segment. Apparently we did.
I know.
Good to go.
So do you buy or sell Super Bowl 58 as the best Super Bowl ever?
See, okay. Let's peek behind the curtain here a little bit. You and I have known each other for a very, very long time. And
Right. Going on 20 years. It'll be 20 years this year.
It will be. It'll be 20 years this fall / summer.
I had hair that looked more like yours when we first met.
And I've got a ton of gray. And it's, I got my hair cut the other day and I had so much gray hair in my lap. I was like, oh. Anyway, so one of the things that you first learned about me before we were friends is that I'm terrible with trivia. Okay.
True.
Terrible.
True.
And
the history buff is bad at sports history.
Really
Somehow.
Really bad. And so it affects it's my memory of sporting events, to be perfectly honest.
You're Mike Greenberg. You're
is he bad?
Recency bias. You're caught up in recency bias, basically.
So
the latest thing is the greatest thing. Kind of thing.
I have watched the Super Bowl every year since I was 10 years old, right? I got nothing. But I was starting to think about this, and I didn't even Google it or anything, but the first one that came to mind was the New England comeback with Atlanta.
Which was the first overtime game that just a few years ago.
That was a pretty exciting game to watch, right? So that's got to be up there. But just from a back and forth, I was very into this game.
The Seahawks Patriots, with the interception at the goal line, handing off to beast mode and the whole thing. That was a great Super Bowl. Yeah,
absolutely a great ending. It's up there. It's probably top 5. I think the only thing that would prevent it from being at the top is the lack of offense. Now, the defense played great. I mean, that's part of it.
Right.
But
it wasn't the most entertaining game for the balance of the game. Late fourth quarter and into overtime, it became a very entertaining game. But as we were kind of texting, it's like field goals and punting. It's like there wasn't a whole lot of action.
Yeah, I tweeted about this. Right, I quoted a tweet somebody put out there this is kickers and punters are loving this game, and I'm sitting next to my son and he is loving this game. We're Super Bowl records were broken on field goals, punters were just booming the ball. I mean, he was loving it. Right, as in this day and age in 2024 with all the betting and everything, it's all offensive stats, Sean. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the legs of the parlays that I put together and everything. And the little meters that show you how far you've gotten are so low because there was just no offense in the first half. I mean, it was just nothing. And it was this sucks. It was just nothing to get excited about from a betting standpoint. And since I didn't have a dog in the fight per se, it was come on, man, give me something. And it was just too little too late from an offensive standpoint. So, yeah, but it was from watching a football game standpoint, it was thrilling. It came down to the wire, obviously,
close
with
and
overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah.
So it would probably top 5.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically splitting hairs when you start talking about was it and all the stuff that you're talking about is I don't know how many times there'll be a close game and my dad, we'll be talking afterwards and go, oh, great game. And I'm like, well, great finish. I don't know if it was a great game, that kind of thing. And that's it. I did feel like it got better, at least as you started to see a little bit of scoring. And then, okay, what's this team going to do? The block extra point was a big event, obviously, and it turned out to be a pretty crucial event as it turned out when the Chiefs blocked that extra point, and then
kidding.
There were a lot of little things. The muff punt, obviously, the big pass play, early on, and then Pacheco fumbles after that, and then
2 fumbles in the red zone. I mean, each team had a fumble in the red zone going into score. Yeah, those were huge. Obviously, I mean, those were absolutely huge. And like you said, the kicking game back and forth was fantastic. It was, I mean, to be honest with you, the game itself, to me, was very similar to the halftime show. Started off really slow and boring and ended up on a high note. There you go.
And I just realized I didn't even put the halftime show on this rundown.
You didn't. Today. Or commercials for that. Well, no, you did.
There's one. There's one about the commercials.
There's one.
I was a little... I'll answer this question first.
Okay.
I don't think it was necessarily the best Super Bowl ever, but I did. The fact that it went to overtime, there's only been 2 overtimes, that at least raises it in the way, things played out in the end. I think probably like you said, it was one of the top 5. We've been very fortunate that in recent years we've had a lot more competitive Super Bowls because
True.
There was that stretch like 20 plus years ago, where it was just a blowout every
single year. It was awful. Like the games themselves were awful, but the commercials were better.
The commercials last couple years the commercials were better back then.
Back in the day, they were better. Like every commercial was like, all right, man, this is hilarious. Like, this is great. It was so good. And then they went, and they're starting to get a little bit better. Like there were a few good ones. This year.
We'll save that for just a second. Okay, so the 49ers, of course, won the overtime coin toss. They took the ball first in overtime. Do you think it was the right decision to take the ball first?
They are getting crucified.
They are.
They are getting absolutely crucified 24 hours later for electing to take the ball in overtime.
Hold it. Let's ask Brent Smith. The commercials and halftime show absolutely disappointing, similar to Kyle Shanahan.
Brent.
I love the fact that he's all over Kyle Shanahan.
Today. 100%.
If the 49ers want to get rid of Kyle Shanahan, I'll take him down there in Arlington.
Seriously. Okay, there are plenty of places that would gladly take Kyle Shanahan.
That's right. Now, this is an issue, though. This overtime thing is an issue. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead and tell me what you think about this.
In the moment, probably because I also, apparently, along with all of the 49ers, didn't know the new playoff overtime rules.
Right.
And so it made sense
like
in the moment.
Texted you guys like what Romo was saying about, you just go to the next quarter. And it's like, okay, apparently it does. It's just like...
it just makes no sense. Because... Right. Yeah, absolutely. It makes no sense whatsoever. And
it's a lot different than what we're used to. Like we are very like the old overtime rules. It was a no-brainer. You win the coin toss. You're taking the ball because if you score, there's a good chance the game was going to be over. But it's a lot different now.
Right. I don't want to step on your next question, but there's a lot of things I don't understand about because I texted you back when you were like, what is he talking about with it? It doesn't matter that it's the end of the quarter and like all these other things, but it's like you're guaranteed a full drive. And so I guess you get to go as long as it takes to get your second drive. And if it goes into the second overtime, I guess, then it doesn't matter. Like it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like I understand why they did it, but then the application of it didn't make a whole lot of sense if that it all even, comes through.
No, and so I was reading, there's a really great story if you go to theringer.com.
Okay.
Really great story about this. One of the reporters wrote talked to the players on both sides about, like what kind of the thinking in that situation. The Chiefs apparently, and now look, Andy Reid used to be known as the anti-game management guy, right? Like he was botching clock management and all these different things. The Chiefs apparently practiced this scenario in their lead up to the Super Bowl. Like if overtime happens, this is what we're going to do. This is why we want to do it. Chris Jones, the defensive lineman, who I think there was actually a case for MVP in that game based on the way he played, especially late in the game, but that's another, for another day. But he said afterwards that the Chiefs knew they wanted to play defense first if they won the coin toss because they looked at their analytics and that's, what they wanted to do. Multiple San Francisco players said they only learned the overtime rules, these new rules, by looking up at the Jumbotron because they put them up there, like in between as they're getting ready for overtime. Shanahan's analytics said that they wanted to have the ball third. which is a situation you are not guaranteed. No one's guaranteed, like the third possession of overtime. So like you're thinking about the third possession of overtime rather than the first and second when, the second one's not even guaranteed. That's right. That's right. So like he's preparing for a situation that you're not guaranteed and obviously didn't happen. And basically what it comes down to is because of these new rules that the NFL now has for their overtime, I'm not saying it's identical, but they're much more similar to college football. Whereas, like the biggest similarity is if you get the ball second, you know what the other team has done. And so now you know what you need to do. Like the Chiefs faced 4th and 1 in their own territory. If they have the ball first, they're probably going to punt in that situation because they're back around their own 35, but you're down by 3 points. You've got to go for it. So like, you know what you need to do if you've got the ball second based on, what the team did first. And, for that reason alone, that's why Shanahan should have kicked. I know there's a talk about, well, their defense was tired. Well, the Chiefs' defense was tired as well. So it's like everyone's tired. It's the end of, a football game, and it's the Super Bowl. And I think you burn more energy and all that different stuff. But, again, it's like that's the similarity to me with college football now is like with these new rules.
It basically is like college.
The team that goes second knows what they need to do.
Right.
And, and again, that benefited the Chiefs knowing what they needed to do. They knew that the 49ers had a field goal and they knew that they had to at least match that field goal or the game was going to be over. Like the 49ers could have won that Super Bowl if they stopped Mahomes on 4th and 1, but Mahomes made plays,
I get that Shanahan wants the ball in the third possession because then it's whatever score wins the game. Like I get that.
Right.
But you're not guaranteed to get there. Yeah. You're not guaranteed to get to that spot. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? And so the first part of overtime is exactly like college. And you always make the other team, if you have a choice, take the ball first so that you know what you're up against. But I mean, it's not that complicated. And so I didn't think of it in the moment because I hadn't processed what these new rules were, to be honest with you. Like in the moment, I didn't care. Like, it's fine. Hey, take the ball.
I felt like they actually could have explained them. Like that's something that like Romo and Nantz and even what's his name, Gene Steratore, since he is the rules analyst, like they could have done a better job in that in between regulation and overtime of explaining exactly what it was going to be. Because, again, right before the Chiefs scored that game-winning touchdown, Romo was like, well, here's why here's why you don't have to be worried that they're not calling timeouts because it's just going to roll right into the next quarter. And I actually was rewatching some of the game today, and the official did say during the coin toss, we're basically starting a new game.
Yeah, he did say that. Like, yep. Yeah.
But again,
But I didn't know what that meant when he said that.
I didn't either. And that's why I was confused when Romo said that. I'm like, what's he talking about?
Right.
Don't you have to but you're, like you said, you're guaranteed your full possession.
Yeah.
Which takes me to the next question. Why do we even have a clock if that's the case in overtime? Why do we even need a clock? Again, like college football, you don't have a clock for the overtimes. You just have downs.
Yeah. Which is what they should have had. There's no reason for a clock. None.
You need a play clock and downs. That's all you need, right?
Like if they would have gotten, and I don't even know the answer to this question, so it's kind of hypothetical, and I don't know that you know either. But like, let's say they go to the second quarter and KC kicks a field goal, right? And so now they're going back and forth, and it's next score wins and all that. So they get to the end of the next quarter. Do they get to the 2-minute warning as well? Like, is it like a half of football, and then do you get another halftime?
Good question.
And they call up to like Taylor Swift's booth and like, hey, can you do a couple songs for us? Like what? I'm serious. Like I'm kind of serious. Like what happens if you get to quote unquote halftime of the new game? We had a whole lot of time.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I do feel like with all this Taylor Swift outrage, like if she would have brought Blake Lively with her more often this year, maybe less outrage, right?
100%. 100%.
Made a lot of people happy, I think. Bring Blake Lively.
Yeah, keep that other gal away, but you can bring Blake Lively anytime. Anytime.
That's right. By the way, did you know what an Ice Spice was before or who?
Sure did. I found it out. my kids knew who that was. My daughters. And
my wife thought it was one of the Spice Girls from like back in the day. Like, I think the Spice Girls are old enough to be her mom at this point.
Wasn't there a commercial? Yeah, there was a commercial with Beckham and his wife, who was a Spice Girl. It was the whole, you have to forget something to remember something. And they were trying to remember what group she was in. Like, that was funny. Like, that was actually funny. But there were a lot of commercials where you had to like know some sort of a backstory first to understand the joke. You know what I mean? Like that was, I like those. They're kind of smarter commercials. Like I kind of dug some of those. Anyway,
Corey says CBS showed Taylor 14 times from start to finish. You know, it was like funny
2 or 3 seconds.
As I was sitting there, and you know the big pass play to McCole Hardman that was right before the Pacheco fumble.
Yep.
They're like that, like they caught it, or he caught it and he's tackled. And I was sitting there and I said, "Ooh!" I said, "Get ready because they're probably getting." Before I can even get it out of my mouth, boom! Cut to Taylor Swift going crazy.
Oh yeah.
And I said they're looking for a reason at this point to cut over there. They hadn't. That was the first time they cut over there
because Kelsey had one catch for a yard,
right?
And they were only going to show her if he did something, right? And so they had plenty of opportunities in the second half, but only once in the first half. And so, of course, they go. Obviously, the best part of that whole thing was what Blake Lively said when he caught the ball, which was awesome. But anyway, yeah, that was it was very interesting. The whole thing. I mean, if they showed her 14 times, it was no more than like a second or two each time. So you're talking about less than a minute of her, except for when after the game was over and you got to see him kissing and everything else. But like during the game, less than a minute. Cool, man. Like doesn't bother me.
Did you kind of like when they brought Travis Kelce up there on the stage?
Why?
Kind of like why?
Why?
But it's like it's obvious, right? Because they wanted a reason.
To
do more Taylor Swift.
100%.
And literally, I think Jim Nantz wanted. Kelce, it's like, oh, but you got to fight for your, like, he's like,
he totally nudged him.
Right. And doing his Viva Las Vegas and all that.
I don't think he was expecting the Viva Las Vegas. And that was a little much. It was a little long.
Right.
He didn't need to do the whole verse. But he definitely wanted him to fight for the right. I mean, he's like, I think he almost actually gave him a nudge, like with his arm. He's like, hey, you got to fight for your right. Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he had no business being up there. None whatsoever.
Fill in the blank. Tony Romo's Super Bowl performance for CBS was blank.
It was fine. It was fine. I had no problem with it. People are outraged by Tony Romo. Some people in the chat as well are like outraged with how he did. I had no problem with it. I think somebody said something along the lines of like, stop trying to predict or tell them what to do. Like, that's his job. That's what you're supposed to do. That literally the play-by-play guy goes, Tony, what do you think they should do here? That's your job. Like, don't tell him not to do something.
I mean, if Nantz is going to ask him, then he's got to answer that question.
He was fine.
I thought he did really good. Like based on some other games like that he's had during the season, I thought he was actually pretty exceptional. And look, it's like, I think he's become an analyst who just like when he was a quarterback, if you want to criticize him, you're going to find reasons to criticize him, and there are a couple of sports media guys who cover this stuff. I read their columns this morning and they're picking Romo apart with stuff like, well, it was a defensive game. He could have done a better job explaining why the defenses were so effective and that kind of stuff. And my counter would be, well, it's the Super Bowl. Like, how deep do we need to go with that kind of diagnosis? Because a typical national broadcast is like 15 to 20 million. And this had at least 115 million watching last night, right? So you've got a lot more people. You got 4 to 5 times more people watching than a typical broadcast, which means what? Casual fans are watching. So you don't need to go with that deep kind of stuff. Like, I thought he did a good job, and like Brent's been talking about, the 49ers stopped running the football. Like Romo was talking about, they need to get Juszczyk out there on the field. They need that 21 personnel, get running the football. And their offense was more effective when they did that. Like, I felt like he was prepared. He wasn't just, like off the cuff, just, spewing some nonsense like he is known to do a lot of times, like on the McCole Hardman, the game-winning touchdown, they went right away and they showed exactly why it worked and how it worked and the whole thing. I thought he did a good job. Was he perfect? No, but I don't think any analyst is. And again, I just feel like people are looking for reasons to pick him apart more so than your typical analyst.
I was kind of listening. Obviously, I was at my house. I'm watching the game. I'm listening to Tony Romo because of all the hubbub about him, and I'm trying to come up with why people would be upset with what he's doing. And I will say that in general, I don't get hot and bothered about announcers like some people do, but I didn't hear anything that like bothered me. There was nothing that he did that I was like, why are you talking about that?
Look,
what
like, I know I'm the Cowboys fan, and you're going to say, Cowboys. And, just because there are things that he has said, especially over the course of a season, that like just get annoying, and, you kind of scratch your head sometimes. But, again, it's the Super Bowl. So you're kind of holding the microscope up a little bit more. I felt like he did a really good job, and like, he talked, again, like if people are going to say, well, he wasn't explaining the defenses enough. Like he talked to like when Purdy called the timeout or when he didn't call the timeout with like what the Chiefs were doing with the safeties and, the other way around,
talks about that stuff a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, look here, there was one part where he talked about, he sees the blitz coming and he's checking and the blitz came from the backside and they ran to the left. Like he was calling what the defense was doing. I mean, that's his job. I mean, look, why did he get the big payday? Like, he was in there and he was predicting what the teams were going to do, right? I mean, that's why he got the big payday, because it was very impressive what he was able to do.
Yeah.
Don't take that off of his plate.
He became very popular by doing it. Personally, I think I've said this before, he needs to go back to doing it more, but I don't think the networks want the CBS brass wants him, doing that. So,
which I don't understand. Like he's kind of showing how smart he is and telling people what's going on. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And part of an analyst's job, and you can talk about it in baseball. How often are you listening to a baseball broadcast where the play-by-play guy asks the color guy, hey, Jim, what do you throw here? Or, hey, Johnny, do you steal here? Like, you ask the color guy to predict what's going to happen.
Right.
That's his job description. How can you be upset with that? That's exactly what you're supposed to do. So,
personally, I think some play-by-play guys can use that as too much of a crutch by constantly putting the analyst on the spot for like, what do you do here?
Sure.
Like that kind of thing. But I don't think Nantz does it too much. Like you said, he did it a couple times last night. I think some play-by-play guys, like I said, use that as a crutch.
It happens more in like baseball because there's more time to talk. I mean, you've got to talk more in baseball. So, I mean, it happens more in baseball. So it's just an example, but like, it is kind of your job to think what's going to happen. That is your job.
Yeah. TD4ND said, did anyone notice 49ers player wearing a tail? I did not. Was that Juszczyk that was doing that? Or was it one of the linebackers? Maybe
like during the game.
There was like a big red tail, like sticking out of the back of his pants. I couldn't figure out what exactly that was about.
Definitely didn't see that.
I did notice. I noticed it on the sideline.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All righty.
It was interesting. By the way, Brent, I did, like with the whole, like, what was his name? The linebacker. I can't think of the linebacker's name now.
Warner? The guy that got hurt. It was like Greenlee or something along those lines.
Greenlaw.
Yeah,
okay. Dre Greenlaw. Yeah, that
tough.
sucks. Like to see that, and especially, and that's like case in point when people talk about, it's on the strength coach, to get to prevent these injuries.
You can
that is just proof that those things are just going to happen sometimes. Like, I mean, to literally just start to run on the field.
Yeah,
Achilles goes.
Like that's just dumb luck. It's just dumb luck. I mean, all there is to it, especially in the Super Bowl. I mean, he's just running off the sideline.
Yeah, I like the 49ers linebackers. I will give you that, Brent.
Oh yeah.
One, they both seem like pretty good guys, Greenlaw and Fred Warner, and two, they're both really good. And I wish that I had, they're the kind of guys that I wish were on my team. So I will give you that.
Warner's really good. I mean, he's really good.
He is.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan.
Yep. Ditto. So what was your favorite Super Bowl commercial, Vince?
This one's pretty easy. I mean, there were some good ones. Like I said, there were like some underrated commercials. Like, for example, an underrated one was they were doing a promo for the new Ryan Reynolds movie, If, and they had, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was pretending to be John Krasinski. He's like, I'm John Krasinski. I'm the director of If. Well, you've got to know that back on The Office, they played a prank on Dwight where he came in and he's pretending to be the John Krasinski character. And I mean, it's a hilarious bit. I'm sure you've seen it. But like, if you didn't watch The Office, you have no idea what that commercial was referencing. You know what I mean? Right. So I thought that was hilarious. Like, that was really, really, really funny. I love that bit. He's like, but you're Asian. He's like, you never noticed before. Congratulations for not seeing race. Like, that's just hilarious. But anyway, my favorite one by far was the Dung Kings.
Yes. Matt
commercial.
Damon, Ben Affleck.
Oh my God. And Matt Damon just absolutely sold it and knocked it out of the park. Like, it was a good commercial with Tom Brady and the whole, and like, and she's just like, oh my God, like, what is happening? And he's like,
Tom, you can stay.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And the last part where he's like, remember how I told you I'd do anything for you? This was anything. Like, like, that was fantastic. It was hilarious.
So during the game, at some point, I was on social media and they showed, it was like a behind the scenes, like they were out on the back lot and they had like this big, it was like a donut that was like a target, and they were trying to throw footballs at it.
Okay.
And so Affleck tries, and it was like they were seriously, like they were standing, however many feet away, and they're all trying to throw it, like through the big hole in the middle of this metal donut that was up against a wall. And Affleck is literally like he's never thrown, like, and he wasn't playing it out. He was just like sailing balls. He wasn't coming close. Damon steps up and he's at least, like hitting the donut thing.
He's in the neighborhood.
His throws. It's not going through the hole really, but he's hitting, the outside part of the target. Brady steps up and it's like right through the middle with everyone.
Of course it did.
Yeah. But I guess they're selling those warm-up suits.
Yes, they went on sale today at noon.
Yeah.
So those are some pretty loud warm-ups. I don't know. I think they were like $60 a pop, something like that.
It's actually not a bad price.
I mean,
I don't know that I'd wear one, but it's not a bad price.
There was a running gag when we first started doing shows that like the IB crew were going to get like warm-ups and they would all match. And we would like walk into Notre Dame Stadium on game day and like with the old school warm-ups,
like the Ali G look or whatever.
It was a running gag for a long time, but yeah, that was that was a great commercial. I mean, they nailed every part of it. You know, you had to know they were all from Boston, like just all of it, the cameos, the fact that they were dressed ridiculously, all of it. It was all fantastic.
I thought the Christopher Walken commercial, I got some good chuckles at it when everyone like that he was like coming in, they were doing Christopher Walken impersonations.
I bet he gets that a lot.
Oh, he's got to.
Everybody thinks they can do Christopher Walken, right? Like everybody thinks they can do it. And so I bet you that was based in reality. You know what I mean? And he's just like rolling his eyes and like, yeah, okay.
Hey,
it's
a nice little check to cash too if you're Christopher Walken.
You're not wrong there.
I'll take the cash. Sportsman Philly 22 says he really likes Romo, even though he hates the Cowboys. Find him excellent overall.
There you go. See, and I'm not a Cowboys fan by any stretch of the imagination, but like I thought he did a good job. I had no problem with him whatsoever.
I didn't either. You have young kids. Did they watch any of the Nick broadcast that they did with They did the first ever Super Bowl Nickelodeon broadcast. There have been some playoff games the last couple of years, but they did the Noah Eagle and Nate Burleson did the Nickelodeon. Did you watch any of that?
Didn't watch a second of it. It was so my kids are actually almost too old for that kind of stuff at this point. So
I thought maybe your youngest was still.
Yeah, he's
like
so anti-sports. It just makes me cry myself to sleep most of the time.
That's why you're supposed to show him the Nickelodeon broadcast, because get their interest in it.
Yeah, Jesse said he watched an entire quarter of it, if that tells you something, and he thought it was good.
Really?
So yeah.
Did I miss that text last night?
I think it was in the group text. Yeah.
Okay.
I never jumped over to it. I don't know. Like, I watched the Toy Story one that they did, a few months ago, like that kind of a thing, which I thought was kind of a cool little deal. And actually, if I remember correctly, that was the only way to watch that particular game because it was on a network I didn't get. So I had to watch the Toy Story version. But I like the fact that they're trying to appeal to younger viewers. I think that's actually pretty cool. I watched some of the replay, like on Twitter and stuff like that, and
it was kind of funny seeing the. I mean, I wouldn't want to watch it, obviously, like if I'm watching the game that way. But if I had kids, but it was funny after the game-winning touchdown when like the slime shoots out and like the whole end zone was covered in the green slime. I did see that. That was
okay.
That was there's a little bit much with that stuff, but
yeah, it is. But I guess they like showed celebrities and they turned them into like cartoon characters and like all this other stuff. So
yeah.
I get where they're coming from. I like it. It's just not for me.
No.
So
again, I mean, you've got at least a kid in the demographic.
Yes. Well,
so if he's not going to watch it, then
I have a kid. Yes, but the other 4, the 3 in the middle, were all wanting to see Taylor Swift. That's all they cared about.
There you go.
You know what I mean, and so.
And that's
that
why you had 14,
on the other one.
That's why you had 14 cutaways.
Right, 100%. And it was my responsibility to let them know when she was about to come on.
Do you have to pause it?
I was like, you might want to pay attention.
We're going to be over here. Tell me when Taylor Swift comes up.
It's probably coming because, Kelsey would make a catch or, something like that. And they would get their 2 seconds of Taylor Swift, So my daughters made bracelets. The whole thing. Hey, she made herself like Travis Kelce bracelet, Chiefs, the whole deal. Like she was all in.
This whole thing, this is my theory. And again, guys, gals, we're not going to get too hung up on it, but it happened. So we're going to address it.
Sure.
Right? It has become a phenomenon this year because she is one of the most famous people in the world, whether you like it or not.
Facts.
And she is at the games. I think that the NFL has been doing this because, there was a lot of joking about, Usher is the halftime act. I think at some point in the future,
are we grooming?
Like to have Taylor Swift, and they've kind of shown Taylor Swift just how many eyeballs, are on an NFL broadcast. When you think about, everything that's, and again, I think that sometimes she hasn't necessarily liked the attention that's come along with it when she's over there. I don't think she minded at all when she had her celebrity friends and everybody else with her, during the Super Bowl. But
if she's going to do the halftime show, I hope the Chiefs are not in the Super Bowl so that Travis has to come and watch from the luxury box, and then they can pan over to him during the show.
Right.
It's a reversal of those roles at the Super Bowl. But I was only half kidding if they would have made it to a second halftime. Like, what do? You going to call Reba out to, do some singing?
Right.
Are you going to, what's the plan? What's the plan here?
Bring Post Malone out, I guess.
I mean, there was a lot of singers there. Like, there's a lot of things they could have done. Would have been great.
So Jim Nantz made a plea during the broadcast for Brent Musburger to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Dan Patrick did it last week when he had Musburger on his show in Vegas as well. Do you buy or sell Brent Musburger in the Hall of Fame?
It's a huge buy for me. It's a huge buy. I love Brent Musburger. I think if you are, and he's iconic, right? You're looking live. I mean,
right.
Not only do you know exactly who's doing the game as soon as you turn it on because of that line, but he's made it into cartoons, like he was in the Cars movie because of it. So he transcends the sport even.
Yeah.
Because he kind of, jumped over into different things. Like, he absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame. No doubt about it. It's a huge buy for me.
100%. 100%. And like, again, I told you that at the start of the show, I recorded that thing. They were showing how the NFL Today on CBS, how that started. I believe it was in 1975. They said he is the godfather of the NFL pregame show. Like, look at what pregame shows are now for, I mean, not just NFL, obviously, but every sport. Like, that's what you did, like for a long time. That was the show that you watched. It was the first show of its kind. And, like I said, I recorded that and I watched it last night, and it was just really, and Jane Kennedy was the one who replaced Phyllis George for a little bit. And then they brought back Phyllis George. But, again, Irv Cross and Jimmy the Greek, and like total nostalgia for one, because it was literally the show that I watched every Sunday before the games started, because you didn't have any other shows like it. And I mean, his career, he's still doing, like his sports wagering shows and things like that.
Oh, that's true.
In Vegas. I don't think that he's broadcasting, like games anymore, but his career spanned forever. And like, he is one of the originals. There are so many people who are working in the business today because they grew up watching Brent Musburger. And, there are places in these halls of fame for the voices. And like, he is one of the iconic voices of the NFL, and really, I think you could say football in general, because he did college football for so long as well. But, broadcasters like him are a huge part of the lineage and the history of their sports. And people connect to these sports because, like they're watching at home. And he's one of these people who connects the fans to the sport, and again, like, this was the original NFL pregame show, and he was the host of it. He was the centerpiece of it, and he absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame. I can't believe that he's not already.
Right. Brent Musburger. That was his character in Cars.
Brent Musburger.
That's right.
Thanks for the super chat, Bill. He wants George Strait, Hardy. I'm not sure who Hardy is. I only know who Luke Combs is because of, like the recent fast car thing. But he says, how hard is that? Apparently that's what he wants for a halftime show. And, if you've noticed, they've gone a lot more, R&B type, like that kind of stuff. Because again, it's like the demographic that they're going after. They've gone much more in that direction.
I don't see them ever going.
We had the conversation last night. My wife went, well, they had Aerosmith on before. And I said, honey, that was literally 20 years ago.
Yeah. Because it was, I mean, honestly, that halftime show was Aerosmith, Britney Spears, and NSYNC.
Right.
Like, that was a great show. Like, I enjoyed that show.
Literally 20 years ago, though.
Was it really?
So,
gosh. Oh, man.
I know.
But that was a show I really enjoyed, to be honest with you.
I tell you what, I watched, I think it was yesterday. It was someone was tweeting it, like the Prince halftime show. I hadn't seen that in a long time. And
Michael Jackson.
He's just so good, man. Michael Jackson's was pretty good.
Where they were shooting out of the out of the jumbotrons. There was like 4 of them around the whole stadium, and it was whoosh. Obviously it wasn't him, but it was like, guys jump, like, those were awesome.
The best one, have you seen? I guess like the halftime artist does, like the day before, does a press conference before the Super Bowl. Have you seen Prince's press conference?
I don't think so.
He came out, they had the full band up on stage, and instead of answering questions, he like broke into Johnny Be Good.
Really?
Yeah, that's
awesome.
It was, I mean, that like could have been the halftime performance itself right there. Like this
100%.
He did Johnny Be Good at that press conference. That was awesome too.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah, Google that if you like, look it up.
Well, I'll have to do that. Yeah.
Prince, Johnny Be Good, Super Bowl press conference, whatever, brings it up. Good stuff. Good stuff. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame women's basketball's double overtime win over Florida State was blank.
It was awesome. I mean, it was nerve-wracking, but it was awesome. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. I mean, and Notre Dame had the last shot, I think 3 different times. End of regulation, end of first overtime, and the end of the second overtime. And, of course, end of the second overtime, they end up shooting free throws.
Right.
So I guess they really didn't have the last shot, but they were able to go up and, the whole deal. But I mean, it was a great game. And Notre Dame just battled, man. You and I were talking about it before we went on the air. It was unbelievable how many threes that the opposition was hitting just nonstop. Like, I leaned over and I said, I was texting with some people. I was like, there's no way that they're going to be able to sustain the shooting that they're doing. Like, Notre Dame just has to kind of hang in there, right, and just kind of just suffer the barrage. But like, they didn't cool off a whole lot. They cooled off some, but they didn't cool off a whole lot. And Notre Dame was able to fight and claw and do everything they could to get back in this thing and ended up winning it. I mean, that was a hell of a game. And like I said, the fact that it led up into the Super Bowl just made that day even better too. Like, just the placement of it.
And that was the amazing thing, that they could withstand that, because like, game started off, they got in a 10-point hole there pretty quickly. Neil Ivey called a timeout, and it was like, whatever they talked about.
You were right. Okay, could you hear them like in their huddle? I mean, you were.
I wish that I could. I need to like set a microphone over there so I can start
John Steyer's made a couple of cameos every time they showed Neil Ivey. So,
oh really?
Well, that's like that green pullover you had.
Because like, did you see me, like doing these and this
trying to look around her?
So I could look around her to see what was going on? It was one of those games.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem for sure.
But you're right. I did wear the green. It stood out with everybody else wearing pink, I guess.
It did. Yesterday. It did. Yeah. But you're looking good, and it was. Oh gosh, what is her name? The new girl, number 13. DeWolf, man.
Anna DeWolf.
She was on fire too. Like, every time they needed a big bucket, she came through, man. I was very impressed because like the game prior, she couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And that happens when, in basketball, like sometimes you're hot, sometimes you're not, but like she was on fire. And I'm going to ask you this. Why did they take her out for like the last few minutes of regulation? They could have used her sharp shooting in there, man.
I'm trying to remember what it looked like at the end of regulation. That's a good,
because they pulled her out
because she's a really good free throw shooter too. And I can't remember, what the substitutions looked like.
Okay, I'm putting you on the spot there, but it's like it seemed odd that she was out at that time. You know what I mean?
Well, and the thing with her and Sherelle Allen is the assistant, because what they do. There's a different assistant coach puts together the scouting report for the opponent that they're playing for every game. And so then the way it works out is for our post-game interviews, whichever assistant does the scouting report is the coach that comes out and does the post-game interview with me. So yesterday it was Sherelle Allen. We were talking about DeWolf, and she just basically said, look, she just needed to shoot more. And that's like, when you look at it, I went back and looked. She averages like 6-7 shots per game. She took 18 shots.
I was going to say, not yesterday.
Now, granted, it's an overtime game, so there were going to be a few more, but still, like, even if you're talking about 14, 13, 14, that's still double 6 or 7.
Sure.
And I think that, there have been times in this stretch where she has been shooting less, where she was just turning down shots. She didn't look like maybe she was overly confident. And it just looked like, and look, I know, people have said, are they too one-dimensional? Is it too reliant on Hidalgo and all this kind of stuff? Well, that was not a one-dimensional offense that they had yesterday. Maddie Westbeld, another, monster double-double game that she had with points and rebounds, and Sonia Citron with another game. Obviously those three, when they get clicking, that's when the offense is at its best. But you don't even have to have what you got from Anna DeWolf yesterday. You at least need the threat of that 3-point presence. And that's 100%. why they brought her in from Fordham, because she can do that. And, like any shooter, she's a streak shooter. And that's something Neil Ivey and I talked about before the game, because they didn't have a good game against Louisville. Right. And her whole thing was like, look, just keep shooting, shooting. And it sounds like, especially with DeWolf, they made a concerted effort. You need to shoot the ball. And look, when she can be even close to that kind of factor in the game, because she hit 6 3-pointers yesterday and ended up with 24 points, which is a season high, on
it's a career high, I think. Yeah.
And look, the biggest shot of the game to me was, you talked about Florida State's 3-pointers. They had just hit one to go up 88-85. They come down. Notre Dame misses a shot. They find DeWolf over on the wing. Bang! She knocks down her 6 3-pointer. It ties the game at 88. Like, to me, that was the shot of the game, and
it was huge.
Yeah.
I remember that. I was like, because I when they hit that 3, I was like, oh, that felt like the nail in the coffin, because it was right towards the end. There wasn't a whole lot of time left on the clock. It was like, man, and then she goes down there and just bangs that shot. It was like, oh, I you know me, I was like, yeah, I got excited when she hit that shot. Like, that was awesome. I like scared my daughter. She was like doing something else, and I was like, yeah, all right. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a money shot at crunch time.
Yeah, and look, they needed it, because there was one of the assistants that I saw, before the game, and I'm thinking, man, she looks a lot more nervous than usual. And I said something to somebody else, and they were like, well, it's probably because we really need to win this game. Well, because, look where the conference standings are and the whole thing.
Sure.
NC State is ranked 6th in the nation. That's who they play Thursday. They still play Virginia Tech. They still play Louisville. Like, the schedule is not getting any tougher, and the top 4 teams get a double bye. And right now, they were in 6th place yesterday. Now they're in 5th place. So they've still got a chance to move up, but you probably were not going to get there if you lose that game yesterday.
That's
so
huge.
They really needed it. They got it, even if it took double overtime. And look, this was their 6th road game in the last 3 weeks. And 2 of those road games were UConn and Louisville. So this has not been an easy stretch by any means. So to go on the road, they didn't have a shoot around.
Yeah,
they got to the arena earlier than usual, so they could get, like a little bit extra shooting in the building. And Florida State has been ranked most of the season. They just got knocked out because they lost a close game. So it's like, to do, with all of that, and to go to double overtime and to just keep plugging away was just a huge win for them.
It's awesome.
They really needed it. Yeah. And I saw some comments about the post play, and I've heard that before. And I mean, would they like to get more scoring out of their posts? Yes. But I'll tell you what, Kylie Watson and Nat Marshall are not taking time off at the defensive end. Regardless of what they're doing at the offensive end of the floor, especially Watson. She plays her butt off at the defensive end. And do you remember the end of the game when they inbounded? I know Hidalgo ended up with the breakaway, but you know who caused
she's the one that tipped it.
It was Kylie Watson who tipped it to her. Yes,
100%.
That's exactly right.
100%.
So they all play their butts off, and that was just a great to be able to go on the road and get that kind of win yesterday.
It's my daughter's favorite player. It's Kylie Watson. She does the dirty work, man.
There you go.
And that's what she loves. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yep. Decaf asks when Prosper will be back. I'm not counting on it at this point. So it's just one of those things, again, like, there's no official word or anything like that, but I'm not counting on it, unfortunately.
Yeah. What did she injure? I'm not even sure about that.
Upper
body, lower body.
It's officially a lower
Okay.
body
Gotcha.
injury. Yeah, because like she's been in the walking boot and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I mean, I think pretty much right now, counting on what they've got, is what they're going to have. That
Makes
kind
sense.
of thing. So Michael was asking earlier who's coming back. I mean, I've kind of, like, I don't know. I think it's all kind of, it's going to be wait and see. The only one who is out of eligibility is DeWolf.
Okay. That's a shame.
So
okay.
So everyone else has got at least some eligibility. The seniors, and like Maddie Westbeld has eligibility left. Nat Marshall has eligibility. They all have eligibility,
man,
because they've still got like final COVID year.
Yeah, sure.
Things. So,
man, if they could bring everybody back, then you add, Cass Prosper back to the mix. You add Olivia Miles back to the mix if they all come back. Like, it'd be a force, man. That could be they're gonna have to learn how to play with each other. But
I mean, and that'll be part of the challenge.
Sure.
If Olivia had been healthy this year, that was going to be part of the challenge as well, and it would look a little bit different than what we've seen.
No, it totally would.
And that is kind of curious to, I'm like anxious to see, like, not anxious, but curious to see what that does look like.
Absolutely.
When they've got both of them two great point guards.
Right.
They've got, and two different kind of point guards.
Yes.
As
and
well.
You can run 2 point guards, but it has to be done carefully to be successful.
Yep. Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame men beating Virginia Tech Saturday was blank.
Surprising, but it was a great team win. I really enjoyed. I remember like I said, I went with my daughter and we're sitting there before, during pregame and I said, look, this would kind of be an upset if Notre Dame wins this game. Virginia Tech's higher than them in the standings, and all this stuff. And they got down. I think they were down double digits, and it's like, oh man, okay, here we go again. But man, this team is fun to watch. Now it is frustrating sometimes, obviously, when the final buzzer sounds and they're on the losing end. Don't get me wrong, but they play. I love how they play defense, and they just, offensively. Usually it's the Marcus Burton show, and sometimes he tries to force it and turns the ball over and things like that. And but sometimes he sets up his teammates and they just miss.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, but bottom line, they just miss, and so they were hitting. I think Braden Shrewsbury is kind of coming into his own a little bit. He's getting a little bit more selective with his shots, and so more are going down. I think the bigs are getting a little bit better. I mean, they are incrementally getting better, but Micah Shrewsbury, man, he must lose about 5 pounds a game. He coaches these guys hard.
I know.
And it is, I mean, I do enjoy watching him. He doesn't take any crap from these kids, and they screw up, they're on the bench. And I love that. I love it. Like, hey, if you're not going to do it, you're going to sit with me. And, he's quick on the trigger and he does those things. And, but it was a great win. I mean, this team needed it. They were on a 7-game losing streak.
Well, that's what I didn't. I hadn't realized that the losing streak had extended that long. That it was, and it's like, man, 7 games. They absolutely needed it. And look, they need a couple more guys who can score. They're not going to find that this year, but they needed to have a win like that. Just, again, like when you've lost 7 in a row,
even though they're close losses, like some of them were close.
That's right. You just need one every now and then to kind of keep you going.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are times where, and I mean, you can attest to this even more than me, where they're like very frustrating to watch because of the fact that they are so offensively challenged.
Yep.
But at the same time, again, to see them buy into the fact that you play at both ends of the floor and they keep playing at the defensive end of the floor, even when things aren't going right at the offensive end. There's it's like a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. When exactly 100%. They'll get there, I don't know, but it's very refreshing to see.
It is.
And the fact that they were able to pull one out like that, I think, is huge for them.
If they can find 1 or 2 other scores, it's going to take a ton of pressure off of Marcus Burton. And when that happens, watch what happens with Marcus Burton. I'm just going to tell you, because I've seen him play on a team, obviously in high school, where he had supporting characters where teams would try to collapse on him and he dishes out for a 3 and the kid hits it. I mean, and then they have to respect that. And then Marcus Burton just absolutely takes over. You know what I mean? And right now he's their only consistent offensive threat. And so teams are going to collapse on him and they're going to make him turn the ball over and they're going to make him make some, questionable shot selection, all of that kind of stuff. Right. And when he has a better supporting cast, he hits more threes. He has better drives to the basket because the lane isn't as clogged. Like, they just need to find some more offensive threats, and he's going to explode.
Michael was asking, I believe, about the women's team. Will the new freshman play this season? What did he say? Can't remember her name. So I'm assuming you're talking about Emma Risch, and she has a hip injury that has been reported. She is done for the rest of the season, unfortunately. And she was another one that, that they thought was, that they brought in, really good 3-point shooter in high school and stuff like that, but unfortunately suffered that injury. Yeah, I mean, you got 3 really good players who haven't been able to play for the most, for most of the season. So, Joe, appreciate it. He says, great show. What's the schedule for the week? No show on Wednesday because we're going to let you do your Valentine's thing Wednesday, and we're going to go do Valentine's stuff Wednesday night. But I'll have a game Thursday night. Jesse and Vince will have the mailbag show that night, and we will have a Friday show as well.
Got to have a Friday show.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it looks like for the rest of the week. Oh, and we will have a show tomorrow. Ryan will be here. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about the recruiting aspect of the O'Leary move to the NFL. Get some thoughts from Ryan on what that is going to mean for Notre Dame from the recruiting aspect. So looking forward to that.
Beautiful.
DK said, if Dylan came home from college looking like Post Malone, how would you react?
Wow. Not favorably is the best way that I can put that. But I feel like, when Dylan goes away to college, it's not like he's going to go away for 6 months and I'm never going to see him, because he's going to be playing and I'm going to be watching. So I will be going and seeing him on a regular basis, that kind of thing. But your question still stands, DK. I would be extremely upset if that was the case.
Right. Ash Wednesday as well. There's a guy at the gym I go to, younger than he looks like early 20s.
Okay.
Who has face tats. And it's like, the face tats I don't get, man.
Well, I mean,
I've got tats, but the face tats, that's completely.
Yeah. You can, if you wanted to, you can cover yours up. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to pass judgment. It's just not for me. And
I think if there's any face tat people watching, right? That's your prerogative.
Yeah, it's just not for me.
It's a lot.
And my son wants to go into a business where he is going to have to show his face around, and he will. And honestly, and it just is what it is. He would lose respect in his profession if he shows up with that. Yeah. He knows. I'm sure he knows that.
Like if I were a musician, maybe I'd do it too, but I'm not.
Right. Right. It is what it is, man. I would be disappointed.
Michael's got a granddaughter who likes Marshall and Hannah. I'm sure a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fair.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up with that. Good show tonight, Vince.
Yes, sir.
Hit a lot as always. Ryan and Jesse will both be in tomorrow. We'll see what kind of trouble we can get into at that point.
Probably lots.
I know, man, we kind of went a little bit extra long tonight, didn't we?
Hey, we give the people what they want.
That's right. All right, hit that like button and of course, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.